So, good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the fourth session of Fireside Chat that is run by eFireside. Thank you for joining in today afternoon. We at eFireside believe that experience is the best teacher that we can have. So, we aim to bring you leaders across various fields to share their experiences and life lessons with us on topics that will be of value to us as a collective. The Fireside series was conceived with this narrative in mind. So here we are with the fourth session of the series today. Prior to this, we had sessions with Shashi Tharoor, Mr. Vijay Raghavan, former CEO of Technopark, and Mehajabi Punawala, who is the country head of Finastra. And today we have a special guest with us. Today's topic on resilience, we feel, is much more relevant than ever in the context of the unprecedented times that we are going through. So, without much ado, I'll hand the session over to our wonderful host for the afternoon, Tejaswini Millay. Tejaswini, over to you.
Thank you, Jaya. Good evening, everyone, and thank you for joining us for this warm eFireside chat. She is a dynamic business leader, a strategic thinker, a proficient mentor. She is a unique blend of advisory and delivery experience with both public and private sector clients spread across the globe. She has the capability and the power of conceptualizing and building businesses from ground up and transforming them into agile capability centers. Yes, you're right. I'm indeed talking about our guest today, Suja Chandy. After leading professional services firms like KPMG, PwC, CGI in Toronto, she joined Invest India as a vice president. She then headed Nissan Digital India LLP as the VP and managing director. Suja is now a director on the board of Indo-Canadian Chamber of Commerce. Suja, I welcome you to this eFire chat today. It is a privilege to have you here. We are all looking forward to an impactful and insightful conversation with you today. I know we all are here to hear Suja, and we are very eager to hear you, Suja. But before I hand it over to Suja, let me just quickly tell all of you about the program format that we have for today. So we will begin, of course, right away by Suja talking to us on the topic that we have today, that's resilience for women professionals. We will then chat with her around the topic. We can ask questions, share thoughts. Please feel free to ask your questions after she finishes talking. You can either unmute yourself or put your questions in the chat box and we will take them up for you. Suja, I invite you to take it over and please share your thoughts on resilience for women professionals.
Thank you, Tejaswini and Jaya. First of all, good afternoon and good evening, depending on where you are. It's indeed a pleasure to be invited to your Fireside Chat series, and a pleasure to be here to speak about a topic that is very close to my heart, and one that I believe is fundamental to our success, whether at home or at the workplace. Recently, I reconnected with an old school friend of mine who had recently lost her husband and was taking care of her two kids and managing a business alone, all during the pandemic, in a city far away from relatives and any support system. When I asked her how she was coping, her confident answer was that it's been hard, but she believes she is strong enough to get through it. Now, that is what I call resilience, the ability to bounce back when life throws you curveballs one after the other, or more scientifically speaking, the positive adaptation, or the ability to maintain or regain mental strength despite experiencing adversity. Or as the Japanese would call it, nana korodi ya oki. which literally translates into 7 times down, 8 times up. Japanese are very well known for being resilient. In fact, Japanese children are taught the spirit of Ganbaru at a young age, which means to persevere, to be tenacious, and never give up. For a country that has been historically ravaged by both natural calamities, man-made disasters, the people have to be resilient and focus on the positives to survive and thrive. And in fact, resilience has become a cultural trait of the Japanese. There is an interesting book. It's called Bending Adversity, Japan and the Art of Survival. It's by a Financial Times journalist called David Pilling, who spent some years in Japan from 2001 to 2008 and covered Japan in the aftermath of the 2011 earthquake and tsunami. In this book, he talks about the resilience of the Japanese and how they cope with crisis. Family ties, social hierarchy, and a sense of community are highly important to the Japanese and helps with building resilient traits. After the 2011 Tohoku earthquake and tsunami, international observers were struck by the calm civility on display as people formed orderly queues outside shops and largely refrained from looting. You must have seen the Daruma doll. The Daruma doll is modeled on Bodhidharma, the founder of Zen Buddhism, both in China and Japan, and is considered a very good luck charm in Japan. The uniqueness of this Daruma doll is that because it's weighted at the bottom, it can move side to side, but it never topples over. It again echoes that Japanese proverb, Nana Koruba Yaoki. So how can we build resilience and be like the Daruma doll? You know, you can not ever topple it. But before we answer that, can we build resilience? And more importantly, can we sustain the trait as our lives are filled with unexpected ups and downs, and we should be prepared to face all of that and whatever is thrown our way? The happy fact is that all human beings can be taught to develop resilience as we are innately equipped with various strengths, which we may now be even aware of in some cases. Resilience is born out of a combination of internal disposition, meaning our internal temperament, our external experiences, and is developed through supportive relationships, adaptive capacities, and positive experiences. Sheryl Sandberg famously said that the seeds of resilience are planted in the way we process the negative events in our life. She is someone who went through a major life-altering crisis with her husband's untimely passing. As a confident corporate leader who inspires many, she has admitted it took her a supportive system that was around her and time to build her resilience, which she has shared in a book with Adam Grant called Option B. In fact, she goes on to say that she thought she will never find joy again, only to realize that while she would always grieve her loss, she was able to experience joy and be full of gratitude and get a new perspective. In that same book, Sandberg and Grant also looks about post-traumatic growth and the 3 P's to consider and avoid. The first P is personalization. We all tend to have this belief that we are at fault when we go through a traumatic experience, even if we may not be, or even if we are. Then there is permanence. And that's the belief that the aftershocks from that traumatic experience is going to last forever. And you will never find joy again. And the third P is pervasiveness. And it's that belief that if an event a traumatic event happens, it's going to affect all areas of our life. Being aware of these aspects is the first step to building resilience. And building it is of paramount importance to both our personal well-being as well as our performance at the workplace. For employers, you can build a resilient workforce when workplace stress and mental health is addressed. And being resilient is associated, as you know, with greater job satisfaction, increased productivity, better employee engagement, and a greater commitment to the business. Not only that, a great number of people, and especially during this pandemic, have identified work as their biggest stress. And when that stress is controlled, the employee's personal well-being is also enhanced. And now with the pandemic and telecommuting, the levels of stress for many have increased significantly with longer hours, lockdowns, lack of privacy, loneliness in some cases, the burden of childcare, elderly care, some health problems. And on top of this, you have your household responsibilities, if you're a woman in particular, and your workload. So it's important for managers and leaders to understand their workforce better and come up with initiatives to help them maintain and regain their emotional well-being. They can do this through a variety of ways. It could be virtual meetups, it could be periodic check-in, it could be giving them flexibility when it comes to work timings, etc. Now, during an unprecedented crisis like this current COVID-19 situation, multiple studies have shown that women leaders have fared far better in governing with faster but collaborative decision-making, communicating, etc., when compared to their male counterparts. So you may wonder how. Women have natural traits that make them more compassionate, communicative, and agile. We tend to work collaboratively, listening to expert suggestions, and we are also open to making strategic compromises for the common and greater good. And women have certainly led from the front, as you all know, be it Jacinda Ardern, Angela Merkel, or our own former health minister, Shailaja Teacher. Now, here in Madrid, the community of Madrid is the province and the Madrid is the city, was the first to remove the lockdown restrictions and bring back a sense of normalcy and allow businesses, which depended primarily on tourism, to operate again. Madrid, during this time of peak crisis, was led by the 42-year-old Isabel Diaz Ayuso, who scored a landslide victory in the subsequent election with an unprecedented number of people, including youngsters, going out to vote. Many attribute the reason for her win to her strategically compromised decision-making to allow bars and restaurants to function with certain restrictions, opposing the national government's and scientific community's advice to implement more severe restrictions. Madrid is Spain's main economic engine, its busiest transportation hub, and a city that thrives on tourism. And not permitting the bars and restaurants to run for much longer would have impacted the livelihoods of many of the province's 6.7 million inhabitants. So even with the province having 1/5 of the country's total confirmed COVID cases, Ayuso fought on a freedom anti-lockdown platform and got a resounding win. While the cons of opening up too soon can be argued, Ayuso was hailed as an effective leader for making a decisive call during an unprecedented crisis. Its traits like resilience, agility, empathy, and decisiveness that have helped leaders like Ayuso and others to be appreciated for their leadership. In a business setting as well, many women bring the same skill sets to the table. And while the glass ceilings are beginning to crack and women are getting a seat at the table, there is still a lot of continuous, sustained effort that needs to be undertaken for it to be the norm. Warren Buffett was once asked the secret to his success, and he responded saying that he was fortunate to have been only competing with half of the population. To be successful at the workplace, women must invest in resilience, must invest in building resilience into their repertoire of traits. While we are inherently blessed with strengths like compassion, empathy, agility, communicativeness, we also tend to have more self-doubt in our own abilities than men have in theirs. We tend to think about what the world thinks of us. We tend to doubt our own achievements, our experience, our education, leading to what is called an imposter syndrome. You must have all heard about it. It's important to acknowledge some of the negative traits we have, since these contribute significantly to anxiety and stress, impacting our self-confidence and bringing with it a constant need to do more and causing mental and physical exhaustion in the process. This happens to almost all of us. And this is what tends to break down our resilience at times. So how do we identify if we have the imposter syndrome? Carleton University in Canada, in their Canada-India Acceleration Program, has listed some traits and personality types that helps identify if you're carrying the burden of imposter syndrome. They have identified 5 personality types. One is perfectionist. So think about it. Are you always striving for perfection and you feel let down if you do not receive acknowledgement for your efforts or the work that you have done? Do you need to micromanage your team continuously? Or are you able to delegate the tasks to your team, trusting in them to do the work? Or are you a superwoman? You overwork, you have no downtime for yourself and constantly need external validation to reinforce your self-confidence? Or are you the natural genius? You're generally acknowledged as the smartest one in the room and are able to take tasks on without much effort, but any failure fills you with shame and prevents you from taking on something new? Or are you the soloist who prefers to work alone and refuses to seek help from team members unless absolutely necessary? Or are you the expert? You are always underestimate your acumen and knowledge experience for a job at hand and is constantly running after more training, certifications, etc. In case you answered yes to any of these 5 personalities, so perfectionist, superwoman, natural genius, soloist, expert, then you could be carrying some sort of imposter syndrome. So if you are, how do you step out of this negative spiral? By acknowledging the negative traits and mindfully working on overcoming these negative thoughts and action. So how do you do that? Sometimes what helps is you list out your achievements. You make a personal list of achievements so you get a perspective of what you have achieved and the effort and hard work that you have put into it. This will also give you an opportunity to acknowledge and appreciate your resilience and perseverance over the years. Or you can delve deeper to identify the root cause of those feelings of inadequacy. Is it caused by your own self-confidence issues? Or is there any discriminatory or stereotypical or bullying behavior exhibited to you or you're facing at work either from your employer or your colleagues. Understanding what is that root cause will actually help you to deal with them effectively. And when you're doing this mindfully, you need to be also specific about what you want to achieve, what your goals are. For instance, rather than running after multiple certifications and things like that, if you feel the need to skill up, you can identify specific areas or the technology that you need to acquire because it becomes easier to work towards your goal. So have a specific goal in mind. And one important thing you need to do is you need to own and visualize your success. You should not, if you have been successful, if you have led a project successfully, you need to take ownership, and you do not need to shy away from acknowledging your contribution. Yes, it's important to celebrate with your team, acknowledge your team's contribution, but when someone gives you a compliment, you do not have to brush it away and say, yes, I'm part of a great team, it's a matter of luck, so on and so forth. Take credit. It is okay. You need to give yourself a pat on the back once in a while. And always remember your worth and your place in the big picture. You may have met with failures, bad experiences, but take it all as a learning and continue with your goals. Rahm Emanuel, you would have heard of him. He was the former mayor of Chicago until 2019. He was a politician. He said, you should never let a serious crisis go to waste. You should take it as an opportunity to do the things you could never do before. Now, resilient individuals, sometimes can be recognized by their confidence, certain behaviors that they exhibit. For instance, they can be recognized by the confidence they exude, their coordination. They are very good at planning. They're controlled in how they react. Their composure. They tend to be. They do not get anxious, or majorly anxious. Commitment and persistence. And I think somebody has to mute. Can you hear me?
Yes, you're audible.
Yeah, okay. And the ability to make adversity meaningful. Now, the UK NHS has embedded resilience training into their work, and it provides a list of behaviors to recognize resilience in their medical staff. A high level of resilience, according to them, can be recognized if their staff has the ability to engage with and leverage others for their own support and development. You can, manage your negative emotions fairly well. You can assert influence, but you're also accepting of external controls. You are willing and you learn from your past experiences, whether it has been traumatic or not. And you seek and use supportive environmental factors, basically meaning the support from the social setting that you are in. And you practice the use of protective factors. So what are these protective factors? Like being aware of the risks, creating a realistic, compassionate, and open team culture, scheduling regularly managed timeouts to discuss problems and work-life balance, shared responsibility to act on stressors and risks, acceptance of responsibility for acting on difficulties, developing generally a culture of support, safety, and confidentiality, and relying on external networks, partnerships, and strategies, along with mindfulness training. Resilience can help reduce burnout. It can increase empathy and compassion, and it helps you reconnect with the joy and purpose of doing a job. And it obviously improves mental and physical health. Employee resilience is also vital for the quality and sustainability of an organization's products and services. Now, science has proven that stress or any emotional upheavals have been associated with a variety of pathological conditions. You probably already know this, including hypertension, silent myocardial ischemia, sudden cardiac death, coronary disease, cardiac arrhythmia, sleep disorders, metabolic syndromes, diabetes, neurodegenerative diseases, fatigue, and the list goes on. Stress and negative emotions have been shown to also increase the disease severity if you're already experiencing or suffering from a number of different pathologies, and it actually worsens the prognosis for the patient. So how do we overcome stress and develop resilient behaviors? It's like building a muscle. You have to increase your resilience over time and with intentionality. The American Psychological Association advises that focusing on 4 core components of our life, like connection, wellness, healthy thinking, and meaning, sense of purpose, can enable and empower us to withstand difficult and traumatic experiences, whether it's at the workplace, at home, or in our social environments. Now, how do we build connections or relationships? First, you need to identify and connect with empathetic, trustworthy, and positively oriented people who can support you through your post-traumatic growth that you're going through. They usually say it takes an army to raise a child. Although you might not need so many people, you have to identify a few people that you could confide in and have them around so they can have your back in times of need. Some of you who are based in Trivandrum may be members of a Facebook group called Her Trivandrum, where women are able to share their insecurities and seek advice without being judged. A community of women supporting other women is a great platform for enabling resilience. At work, you could also create a similar group or identify a mentor or a mentors with whom you could share in confidence and who will listen with empathy. I personally count on my own mom to help me see things in the right perspective. Sometimes it's my dad, my best friend, my husband. It does not matter who you turn to, as long as you know the person on the other side is able to objectively and empathetically listen and be able to also call you out from self-victimization if that is needed as well. And how can we foster wellness? Now, we talked about, superwoman as one of the personality types, and, it was not looked upon as a great type to have. Why? Because in that you're doing your work well, but you're basically not taking care of yourself. Now, self-care is vital when it comes to building resilience, and it's important for maintaining one's physical and mental health. Now, good lifestyle practices, be it walking or taking up a physical sport or exercising or indulging in your hobbies that relaxes your mind, doing yoga, getting ample sleep, eating nutritious food, staying dehydrated, all these are important, as we all know. Also, you have to start practicing mindfulness. And how can we achieve that? Maybe through, and for different people, it's through different ways. There is no one way to do it. So it could be through meditation for people who can follow that, through yoga, through introspection. You can keep a journal, and through prayer, because a lot of people are also, spirituality and faith also helps them. And most importantly of all of this, you need to start practicing gratitude. And practicing gratitude helps you build your resilience. Being thankful is a fundamental building block of resilience and helps us to develop a different perspective and see things in a different light. It also helps us to appreciate the things that we are lucky to have. When you're feeling negative, force yourself to write or tell yourself the positive aspects in your life, that things could be much worse, but it's not, and how you are thankful and grateful for all the good things happening to you, however small or big. Now, in option B, Sheryl Sandberg talks about how she was able to practice gratitude and see things in a different perspective, thanks to a co-author, Adam Grant, who's also a psychologist. While she was still in mourning for her husband, she was certain she would never be able to find joy again. And she thought that this was the worst thing that could happen to her in her life. However, Grant pointed out to her that this was not, and had it been that her husband, who suffered a sudden cardiac arrest, had been driving with their children as well in the car, things could have been worse. This, she says, jolted her out of that state that she was in and into reality, and helped her to be grateful for what she still had. It's also important to develop a sense of purpose. It's common knowledge that if you have a sense of purpose at work, then it automatically translates into higher employee motivation, productivity, better morale, job satisfaction, etc. Millennials, for instance, are 3 times more likely to work for a company with a strong sense of purpose. When it comes to your own self, your feeling of self-worth will also improve when you have a sense of purpose or a willingness to help others. So volunteering is a good way to be engaged, or even being there for a friend or a family member who is going through a crisis. It will help build your own resilient behavior. You should create opportunities for self-discovery after you've been through a negative experience. People tend to become more empathetic and supportive of others who are going through difficult experiences if they themselves have gone through something and have been able to positively adapt and come through it. And you have to think positively. In the self-help book called Secret, by Rhonda Byrne, and all of you probably would have read it already, the power of positive thinking is stressed again and again, and in which the author states that like attracts like, meaning positive thoughts will attract positivity into your life. So according to Byrne, the mind is like a magnet. It emits and receives frequencies to and fro from the universe. Each thought that sends out a signal, which is in turn gathering similar frequencies to the laws of attraction before it returns to you. So it is important that you focus on the positives. You are allowed to feel sorry for yourself once in a while, but do not make yourself feel victimized and wallow in the misery. When negative thoughts surface, purposely force yourself to think happy thoughts and visualize the future. Let's look at small children. How are small children resilient? It's because seldom do they focus on the past or the future, but they tend to live in the present and for the now. It's quite difficult to do that as adults, but at least we should try to force ourselves to think more positively anytime a negative thought happens to come up. Recently, my 95-year-old grandmother was hospitalized for COVID. Her age, her existing ailments, and the fact that she had not been vaccinated complicated the situation further. But as with most members of that generation, she did not allow any of these negative aspects to clutter her mind and stress her out. Instead, she spent her time calling her children and inquiring about their health and visualizing activities that she would like to do once she returns to her home. In fact, her mental strength, spirituality, and strong faith helped her navigate through a situation that could have easily gone south. We all must accept that change is a part of life. It's inevitable. Life also comes with highs and lows. What makes an individual stand apart is how he or she will respond to the situation. You can stress yourself out, or you can take a deep breath and react gracefully, knowing that even a negative situation is temporary and there is always light at the end of the what seems to be a long tunnel. And if none of these, self practices, which you have to almost do daily, are able to help, you should also be open to accepting or seeking help from professionals. And, when we talk about resilience, there are also ways to measure resilience. And there are lots of different tests and questionnaires that you can actually find online. One I thought was quite good, and which kind of gives you a scoring. You have to answer some questions, and then it will give you a rating of, which whether you're resilient, whether you can work at it more, whether you're really, on a downward spiral. So it's kind of sometimes, even if it is not scientifically fully accurate, it sometimes helps us, gives a kind of a compass on where we are heading. One site that I found good is called resilienceyquiz.com, www.resilienceyquiz.com. You can try checking it out. So to conclude, just remember, resilience is an important trait to possess for the personal well-being and for success at home and your workplace. And the key to resilience is having a growth mindset. Resilience at work contributes to greater productivity, job satisfaction, employee engagement, commitment to the organization. And so, as leaders and managers, you must focus on developing a resilient workforce by creating a good corporate culture and prioritizing talent well being. And through simple daily practices, anyone can develop and sustain resilient behavior. And it's vital to have this trait as you all embark on leadership roles. Thank you very much. Over to you.
Thank you so much, Suja. That was so insightful. I just love the context to the story from the Japanese culture, the references to Sheryl Sandberg, and whatever is happening in Madrid in the political scenario, and how you saw resilience coming in and winning there. It was all, and of course it's all important, right? The tips that you gave, the processes, the building blocks, it was all just amazing. uh, you have spoken a lot of the Japanese culture, or Sheryl Sandberg, or these things. I would love to hear from you if you could cite a personal example where there was a setback, maybe at your work or your personal life, whatever you can choose, and how you have used any of these things as your personal mantra for this. I'm sure, I mean, all of this is useful, but it must be something that you did, and it's your way to tackle it.
Sure. So, I mean, in a 20 plus career, and I'll talk from a career perspective, you always go through ups and downs, right? And but the point is that you don't, resilience is a trait that you have to imbibe and grow. And it's not that I always feel that I am resilient, doing the right thing and all that. There are moments when, even as a leader, even with all of, we tend, that's what I'm saying, all of us go through that imposter syndrome at times, right? And you have to force yourself to not think that, and force yourself to say, oh my God, give myself a pat on my head and say, or a knock on my head and say, what is it? There is so many other things to be going well, and this should, focus on that one little thing that is bothering you. So, in my career, I've gone up and down. I've, as in like traveling places, and I have never shied away from taking a risk or jumping into an opportunity where I knew that it was not black and white, but it was almost gray. And, you had to build something through that. Many times I had faced this, and even before, Nissan, which was kind of gray as well, because, I was given an empty, there was no job description, nothing. They said, you have to build this, you have to do this within certain time period, blah, blah, blah. And you had to take it right from, foundation, right?
Yeah.
Only the plan, the great thing was the plan was there and the budget was there, right? And support from global. But we had a plain canvas. Similarly, but much before that, when I was in my 20s, is when I was working for a Canadian company called called CGI, and it's now 66,000 people, employees all around the world. At that time, it was maybe around, when I was working in it, was around 26,000, 27,000. I was part of the global marketing and strategy team. And we worked very closely with the global CEO and chairman's office at that time, and it was in Canada. And so they were working on things like, the delivery model from offshore and near shore. And they wanted to kind of create something like a captive. And at that time, it was just starting to come up, but, not the scale and size of Nissan Digital, but much more smaller. But they wanted to create a unit for research and analytics that supported the the global CGI organization. So I was chosen, and they kind of like talked about it. They said, and I, of course, I never hesitated. At that time, I think when you're young, you're also, that adrenaline is there. You don't really look left, right, and center. You jump in. But I'm someone who always, and you always tell my mentees as well, if you're given an opportunity, grab it. Don't ask questions too much, because it doesn't always come your way. Right. So that required me to actually move from Toronto to Bangalore. And, I had to set up, and again, I knew I had a budget, but within a time period, I had to go to this new place, because I had actually never worked in India before that. Although, I'm originally from Kerala, I've lived, a few years when I was growing up, I had never worked. So it was kind of like, new environment, you go there. And you, from starting from, hiring and the right kind of people, finding the right place, even though we had an office, it had to be set up in a different way. There was a whole, finding the right business model that would work, communicating with multiple regions to ensure that they are also buying into that, because we were centralizing basically the research and analytics capability for CGI. A whole lot of things. And for me, what worked is, I knew that I could not do it alone. So while I had to lead and I had to be the face of it, and I, had to kind of explain and go through the whole thing, I had to also rely on people who I knew better about Bangalore and the local, situation, rather than, saying, okay, I will do everything on my own. Right. So it is very important to find a good team to be around you, to find good colleagues, good collaborative, environment to work in. And I have to say that at that point, there were a couple of people in CGI's HR group who, who went above and beyond to ensure that, they were able to support me in trying to find the right people. And the interesting thing is, I interviewed a lot of people. We started with around just 6 people actually in the first quarter. And there were some people I interviewed, there was a woman candidate. And interesting thing is, I wanted her obviously to join. She was very good, but unfortunately it didn't work out. But interestingly, I am still in touch with that that person, and and she's doing very well where she is. But the point is, you have to do. And at that time, I was in my 20s, late 20s. There's a lot of pressure as well. And because the global CEO himself had signed on it to say that, okay, she's going, I have confidence in her. So that confidence there, but you have to prove it, and you cannot waste the funds of the company, and you have to choose the right talent. So I think for me, there were times where I felt it was very difficult, because while working was going on, I had to also figure out that they wanted me to stay back in Bangalore for a couple of years, right, to set this up and run it. So I stayed there for 2 years. But setting everything up, from scratch, your personal life is also like nothing, zero. You have to start from scratch in a new town. It's a lot of willpower. It's a lot of, positive thinking, and it's a lot of, positive thoughts and saying that, okay, you're going to envision a scenario where it is going to be running well. So for me, I used to keep doing that, right? And I'm like, okay, this is okay. These things are, there are times when people accept the offer on the day of the joining, which still happens. They don't show up, and these are, we have spent a lot of time and effort, and there are different regions of CG and departments who are waiting for their delivery, and meanwhile we had to say, okay, this is just being so. It requires a lot of. I think that was one of the first things that tapped my resilience. I think, there were times where I was ready to give up and run away to some safer things. But, the fact is, you school yourself to stay the course. And I think that has benefited me so much because, ultimately, whatever I got, that experience that I got from there was kind of the launch pad for a lot of other things that I did later in my career, including Nissan, right? Because you had learnings from how when you set up a small hub, but this was about, scaling up and much bigger in size. But the point is, you learn, right? And you just have to force it. Nobody comes in with saying, oh, I am always going to think positive. You just have to school your mind and force yourself. Or if you can't do it on your own, lean on somebody else who can help you see the light.
That is absolutely interesting what you shared. I mean, of course, it's inspiring, definitely. I also love the fact that you highlighted, of course, you need to school yourself, but you also need not do it all or know it all the time, which is very, very important. I feel more important in the context of women. Now that we are speaking to a women audience here, it's very, very important. I could personally relate to it when you were talking. So that was wonderful. While you were answering, you mentioned about Nissan, right? You were the VP at Nissan. How were you dealing with the patriarchal hierarchy and the working conditions of Japan while dealing with the processes and policies in Kerala, the Indian government? Um, and now there's a view where Kerala is not the investor friendly state, um, with a few recent happenings. What is your view on that?
Well,
How did you deal with it?
yeah. So, I was given the mandate to build this hub. They had this vision, the CIO and the global team had this vision of what they wanted, which was kind of on paper. And they wanted someone to come there and put it on the ground and set it up and have it running. So I was at that time working for Invest India. I was the country's investment promotion engine. And so I kind of being Kerala and it's a home state at the end of the day, this was a great opportunity. So I came down. And so when you're building a global capability center from the ground up, you are going to run into operational challenges, infrastructure challenges, financial, technical, name it, whatever, has to go wrong, will go wrong. And the point is, you have to be one of those, tough, you have to toughen yourself and say that, listen, at the end, it's going to all come out well, but I'm not going to give up any, any along the way, at least. And, we were easily, again, I was literally in the office 12 to 14 hours every day, the first 4 or 5 months. My mom still complains that she never, she saw me more, and I used to talk her to her more when I was outside of Kerala than when I was actually living with her, because I basically did not have anything else on my mind other than Nissan. And but again, I had we were hiring at the same time, including leaders in both delivery as well as in operations. And the people that we were hiring all had the same sense of purpose, and there was a good team around me. I have to, I cannot just take and say that I was able to. While yes, I had to lead from the front, there was a lot of good people, and even though I'm not with Nissan right now, I still maintain touch with them, and it's It's good people who had the same sense of purpose and the willingness to put in that effort to ensure that this hub was created and running. Now, when you come to Kerala, and you talked about the hierarchy system, I personally have to say that I did not experience any negativity from the Japanese leaders. I had a leader I was reporting to. He was one of the most senior and the oldest in terms of experience, 35 years of experience with Nissan, and someone who was looked up to and was there from the signing of the agreement with the Kerala government and throughout the course. And I still am in touch with this gentleman. For them, yes, it was very different, right? Our two cultures are extremely different.
Yeah.
And throw in some global culture, it's like, chalk and cheese, right? Basically. But the point is that, sometimes we tend to go into a situation with preconceived notions, right? Okay, they are going to be like this because I have read this. But the situation may not be like that. So when you're going into a new situation, or you have to keep an open mind, right? And you cannot make any judgments over the first few days, weeks, months, because it takes time. One of the things I've come to appreciate from the Japanese, and I've got a few good friends who are from Japan here as well, here in Madrid. They are very, there are some things that we need to respect the way they do it. Whereas, we may find it annoying that they have so many of these processes and procedures. For them, it is about governance, right? And, while it is time consuming, I think the point is we need to ensure that we need to understand why they are doing it. And why is it necessary? And especially for a corporation that is just starting up, for an organization that's starting up, it's better to err on the side of caution than, because a lot of others would want us to just jump into it and then fix the holes later. And I think in India, we have that thing as well, right? Like that jugaad, where we as we come along, okay, we will see the problem, we will take it as it comes along. So I think it needs to be balanced with, it's good to have process and procedures, but also it's important to keep a timeline, and you have to move on, because otherwise you get bogged down in just the procedures. But the Japanese leaders and the Japanese staff as well, some of the juniors as well, they all actually tried, to understand the culture. I mean, there are so many stories around the first few months where the Indian guys were pulling their head, the Japanese were, nodding their heads and saying, "Oh my God, this is," So obviously there is, and we actually introduced a lot of cultural training for both sides to be able to work. But once, and the Japanese, for them, time, and it takes time. You don't, they don't immediately share their confidences or any of that. It takes time to build that relationship. My relationships with the Japanese leaders improved as it goes along, because, I also learned, like, language is a problem, because, obviously a lot of them don't speak English so well. But over the course, I understood that I could also learn a lot from them, right? And there is a beauty to the way they are doing. So I think it goes both ways. And for them, they've found that, okay, we work in a very certain way, but we get it delivered on time. We tend to attack it in a different way. So there are issues, but ultimately, I think it's about understanding the culture, respecting each other's culture, and going along. I personally had not felt anything from being a woman. I was kind of the only woman around in that senior situation there, other than the head of HR. But it was okay. It was, I think it was a great experience. And for me, Nissan is always a very cherished memory, right? And regarding, working with the government, and I have a very different view for this, because, Kerala, one of the things going on for Kerala, and it will continue, because a lot of these global capability centers are starting to look at, tier 2 cities even more so now, right? And talent, in Kerala, you have the talent, right? Now we have to create the opportunities for that talent. And I think the government has to kind of roll out the red carpet for investors to come in. And I'm not talking about manufacturing, I'm talking mostly about the service bases, knowledge based industries, like And for us, Nissan, they were, they had rolled out the red carpet for us. So I did not at any time, experience any issues personally, right from the chief minister, the chief secretary, senior bureaucrats. In fact, they were monitoring the progress of how this hub was being created. And, I had regular quarterly meetings with the CM. I had monthly meetings with the CS. So it was a very different, and we didn't, and probably for manufacturing, they have in all these pollution certificates and things like that, which we as a service industry, we did not have to go through. And I think Kerala is quite equipped from a service point of view to have companies come in and invest, and which we should continue. And of course, from, I had already got a good rapport with the government of India, most of the departments, because I had run Make in India prior to that. I worked with Invest India, and there was always support coming from that end as well. So overall, I think it was fine. It was a lot of work, a lot of sweat and tears also behind the scenes, but ultimately it was a great experience.
That is so good to know. I mean, no experience is all cakewalk, but it is good to know that it turned out so well for you. And of course, there is so much of give and take when you work with people from different cultures. So that's really, I mean, I totally I agree to it. I can totally relate to it. Now, because we've been talking so much about resilience, of course, today's topic is resilience here. It's about, we know that it's a common understanding, it's resilience is about bouncing back and bouncing back to your core and getting back to the normal. But sometimes some trauma leaves emotional scars on you, and then it gets very difficult. So you may already be you may have that resilient quality in you, and had it been some other situation, you would have been more resilient. But when it comes to the personal space, more specifically, uh, how do you handle those emotional scars and still bounce back? And of course, we have some questions from the audiences. I'll move to those questions after this.
Sure,
Yeah.
sure. It's a very good question, right? And who in life has not gone through negative experiences, right? Personal trauma, and it's very difficult, right? But the point is, if we continue, and it takes time. First of all, give it time, right? Time heals to a certain extent. You would not have ever forgotten that trauma, especially if it is, personal, right? It could be, your life altering kind of some event that you've gone through. So you never forget. But the point is that when, maybe 5 years, maybe 3 years, maybe 2 years, it doesn't matter. Give it time, and you shouldn't force yourself. But the point is, there would be a period where you can look back objectively and turn around and say, okay, had I continued in that situation, it would have been even more difficult for me. And, I managed to come out of it in, unscathed, right? To a certain extent. I mean, mentally, of course, you would have got a lot of, kicks, but the point is that you were mostly able to come out of it. So the first thing is to kind of, be happy about that. And it is okay sometimes to, cry and, whatever it takes you to get it out of your system. But one thing that I always have counted on is, it's, after a certain point, it's better not to keep on discussing about that same thing. Because the more you discuss, then you're going and reliving the same situation over and over. And, I especially see, and in India, and it's because people probably want to be helpful, or they're just curious, or they want to be supportive. So the intention might be good. But the point is, when you are forced to kind of relive that experience again and again by talking about it, you are not going to come out of it, right? So what I would suggest to people is to, okay, yes, it has happened to me. I mean, that is, you cannot change the past, but I have a future and I have a present, which I'm going to work on, right? So the point is that and that is where, in throughout my talk, I was saying, it has to be intentional. It's like exercising a muscle, as I'd said before.
Mhm.
You have to force yourself to stop thinking. If sometimes, we feel, okay, if I did not happen to me, I could have done this, I would have been here, I would have been much better off. And then you feel very sorry for yourself, and then you get even, deeper. And that's called the self-victimization and that wallowing, right? Because you will never come out of it. Then you're forgetting to live in the present, and you're, kind of destroying what you have
Mm.
currently.
Mm.
So the point is, the minute you do that, you have to, either talk to somebody who can put some sense into you, or you need to, do it yourself, right? And of course, there are people who have gone through much, much worse, and the degree of trauma would differ, and so does the time it takes to heal, and so does the way it has to heal, right? Like sometimes you would need professional help, but the point is that you have to tell yourself this is not the end of the world, and whatever is coming is going to be for the better. And I have survived this, I can survive anything more. And like the friend I was talking about,
Yeah.
see, it was all very sudden. She had a great business going on. She had a great husband who was, doing everything for her, and two kids who are in their, getting into their teens. Suddenly you're all alone, right?
Yeah.
How do you move? She said, I prefer not to talk about it. It is hard. Some days it's very hard, but I know I'm strong enough to get over it. And I think that's the attitude. And we just need to, knock ourselves over to make sure that we follow that attitude. There's no other easy way.
Yes, yes. It's a combination of a couple of things and having a good support system in
Yes.
place, which is so important. Lovely. I have some questions from the audiences. I'll quickly read out. So there is this question from Anu. She says, does the Indian cultural scenario call upon women to be even more resilient, or are the challenges for women the same everywhere? I have a connected question around it, but I want you to answer this first.
Okay. Well, I think, every woman everywhere in the world have their own unique challenges and some common challenges as well, right? Like anywhere, everywhere in the world, I think stereotypically it is thought of that childcare and the responsibilities, the bulk of the responsibilities at home is on the woman's shoulders, right? So I think from that perspective, we all go through the same thing. But then I think, in India, the system is very different, because I think there is, especially in not so very cosmopolitan cities, right? Because there is this overwhelming curiosity coming in from, around the environment or socially, which puts us more, like it's more challenging then, right? Like, because you are expected to react in a certain way, you are expected to behave in a certain way, and probably these are some of the things that is probably not so much in, say, a Western country, somewhere on the Western continent, right? But I have to say that here in Spain, I've observed women. It's almost like India to a certain extent, because family ties here are very important. They're very close. And, and a Spaniard was telling me recently, a Spanish lady was telling me, the mother-in-law usually expects her son and all her family and the daughters-in-law to be at her house for Sunday lunches. And that's a no-no, that's a given. So almost, you will see more. So, so and we think it's quite different, maybe somewhere else, but it's not. So I think women have similar issues, but maybe the degree or the intensity of some of these vary, with, India being still, kind of coming out of a lot of our patriarchal views, right? And but I think women are, we are getting, and I think men too, right, are realizing the value of that equal society, at least a lot of men. But the point is, we are nowhere close to where we can say it's all done and good to go.
So it's more or less the same problems.
More or less, but
Everybody
different
has their own sets of problems, men and women, I believe. That also, yeah.
Tejaswini, Asha here. I have a question.
Yes,
Shall
Asha. Yeah, go ahead, please, Asha.
Yeah, sure. Thank you. So, Suja, this is in continuation with the earlier question, so you talked about imposter syndrome and women being like considered to be more resilient. But do you think the upbringing what we have here, like where you are asked you should be top in whatever you do, whether it is studies or whether it is a sports, that probably is one of the reason I feel that we are trying to be a superwoman or so how do you think like in the society what we can do to probably at least in the future generation or with the current generation close this gap and
Right.
society understands that this is not something which is the truth. To be successful you need not be top everywhere. So how
Yeah.
do you think society as a whole should control this?
See, the point is that in India, the resources are limited. The supply is much bigger. So you're all, the same number of resources are competing for a very small kind of, wins, right? So it becomes very difficult. So which is why most of the parents, they would try to instill that kind of competitive spirit because, and it's the same, interestingly, in Singapore. If you go to the, Chinese schools or the international where the Indian kids are, you will see that the same kind of competitive spirit is what is driving them because you are also competing for a very small pool, right, of things that you want to win. But I see that it can be more balanced is what I would say, because I think the point is and it would take time. I don't think there is one easy way to do it, but there is also on the flip side, why is India so competitive? Why is India doing so well when it comes to talent in AI, IT, and all? It's only because we have able to come out with young talent, and we are creating hordes and hordes more of them. We could do better in terms of getting them more balanced in terms of the skill sets. But the point is that India has an edge because of that. Most of, if you go to any of the Western developed world, a lot of people in top positions now are Indian CEOs, doctors, this thing. And I think that's our cultural upbringing, right? There is a sense. Indian parents, wherever you are, I don't think they will allow you to just go around and do, you still have to get into an Ivy League. That pressure is there. But the point is, even in Spain, I was talking to a neighbor. She has two kids, and she was telling me, and she's Spaniard, and she was telling me, I think somebody has to go on mute.
Mute, please.
So, so the point is, they were telling me that she has two sons. The older guy wants to be a doctor at 16. He already knows what he wants to do. So she has taken him out of a Spanish school and put him on an international school because she feels the curriculum is stricter there. They will actually learn English. Whereas in the Spanish school system, they're saying English is taught, but the teachers themselves are not so fluent. So, going to get what he needs to succeed globally. So I think, it is all there, if you're a parent, it varies. But in India, the pressure is way too much. Spain, the resources are probably more. And if you do let this anyway get into the school, but still, the parents are taking that effort, right? So to come back to your question, is it going to change? I don't think it's going to change, but I think we need to create balanced individuals. The point is, in my own family, I have, cousins who have become doctors and who I've seen throughout their lives, focus so much on studies and, get through. And now the next generation is coming in and they already know they want to be doctors and, they're going to do the same thing. Whereas, would I do the same? No, because I would like them to be, they are, I mean, it's not saying that they are going to be successful, but I think as a child, you also need to get a more balanced upbringing, because when we were hiring freshers, for instance, when we saw is, the kids from Kerala are super talented, from a perspective of content knowledge, it's all good. But some of the soft skills we still lack because it's the way, we are taught to be reserved. We are taught not to speak up. We're not. So the first 6 months is about them getting onto, that whole thing where they are allowed. You can speak up. You can, open your mind. It's okay. Every question is okay. Put your hand up, volunteer. That kind of, I think when we are creating next generation, I think it should be a balanced way of, developing the kids. And I think kids these days are much more smarter than when back in the, because they have more resources. But it takes the parent also to think that way, so they develop as well-rounded individuals than just being good at one thing like studies or whatever. Because as you go along, and for a leadership role, you need to have well-rounded individuals, balanced individuals, and that's what counts. I hope it answers your question, Asha.
Yes, yes. Thank you.
Okay, we have another question from the audience. This is again related to the imposter syndrome. Priyanka Dalal Mujumdar wants to know, who does imposter syndrome affect the most? Or is it just probably she wants to say, is it the women? I don't know if I'm interpreting it
Yes,
correct.
definitely the women, because and the funny thing is, you would think a person like Michelle Obama, would never say that she goes through this. And in a book, she's talked about it, right? She also feels, right? And this is such an accomplished woman, right? And so everybody goes through that, right? And I think it's the way we culturally, we have been brought up. Like we have always, kind of think we could do better. And I think it's only the women who do that. And I have these, many studies that that talk about how women, when you are applying for a job, and I've seen this, you would have, 90% of the qualifications that's required, or, for that, you would still not apply, or you will not still put your hand up because you think, oh my God, I don't know that, that 10% or that 5%, because you don't feel confident. Whereas some other guy would have probably done less, or have half of that skills, would, have no problems applying for that and being very confident about it as well. In fact, there was this tweet by someone the other day, and I thought, if only a lot of women, smart, talented women, don't speak up, or because of their own lack of self-confidence, whereas mediocre men would pass them without, because they don't have that self-doubt. So this imposter syndrome happens more to women because we, judge ourselves very harshly. We are very, very harsh on ourselves. We are like, if you're doing well at work, we're worrying about, are we doing well at home? If you're doing, if you're sitting at home, you're saying, oh, I could have, I'm not capable, so I'm not going to try to apply. So I think the point is, we need to start thinking differently. We need to start saying that, listen, and these things can happen, but I am confident about my skill sets. I'm confident about my abilities. Whatever I don't have, I will pick it up. This is all an experience, and I will do well. And I think that reinforcing has to happen from time to time.
Yes, that does make sense. We have a hand raised from Srija. Would you like to ask a question, Srija?
Yes, please.
Yes, Srija, go ahead.
Hi, good evening, Suja. My name is Srija. I am from HNR blog. My question is again on imposter syndrome. Now, here's the thing. I've had imposter syndrome, I don't know since when. Okay, and it's only when I read a book and I realized that, oh my God, it so much applies to how I feel, how I think, is when I realized that I have an imposter syndrome. So I very consciously tried to, next time it would kick in and I would realize that, hey, it's an imposter syndrome, just kick it out. Now, my question is, there's a very thin line between kicking out the imposter syndrome and being overconfident about something. How do you deal with that?
See, the point is that if we should be confident in the sense that if we are doing some kind of work, how do we do it? We put in our best effort. We make sure it completes on deadline. We're able to deliver quality things, right? What we are saying is, and depends on what kind of imposter syndrome you're talking about. But if you're like a superwoman, but you want to, I want to sit till 10 p.m. because everybody needs to think that I need to do this, right? Like, and people have to see, I don't believe in such things. It's like, if I complete my work on time, I leave home because I like to do, things outside my workplace and balance that as well. But the point is that I don't, where I know my abilities. And that's also one important thing. Where you think there is a gap, you can, work on closing that gap. But where you think you're confident in your skill sets and I've seen women who have come and talked to me about like they are doing the presentation, they know the content, but yet they are worried because they are saying, when I'm presenting, I'm worried that if I may not have the answers to all the questions. No one has answers to all the questions, even if you are like a brilliant person who, sometimes it's okay to say, listen, I do not have this answer right now, but I will get back to you. Right? And it's okay. Sometimes if we have a gap, we'll acknowledge, we'll work on it. But we do not have to go overboard to either paint a picture that we either know it, everything, or if we fail in something that we will never get back and try it again or try anything new. Or, and it's not overconfidence. And sometimes, when, especially in consulting, an old partner, Korean partner told me this once. When I was young consultant, I just started off. And he said, listen, you coming out of school, we are putting you right in front of C-level execs at that time. And this was in PwC in Canada, and we're charging a bomb for the hours, right? For consultants. And if you go there and you act like you don't know anything, it is not going to help. Basically, you have to go there and project, because a lot of it is also projection. So it is not really called overconfidence. But the point is that even when you are not feeling it, especially when you are not feeling it, you have to show that you know it, and you have to be. You can study again, because that's the only way. And it's not, I would not call it overconfidence. Overconfidence is, not knowing something, but thinking you will do, and, but this is to also manage your own confidence. When women,
I can also use arrogance as a word there. Sometimes, arrogance creeps in.
Arrogance. No, but that only applies to women, right? I've only seen when women take decisions and, are assertive, they are called aggressive. They are called, back in my day, like a long time ago, I had, many words come to me, but then, once people realize, it goes also away, right? Like the point is, whatever you do, there will always be someone who is going to call out in a different way, or, take it and you cannot change all of their behaviors. The point is, are you doing the right thing? Sometimes, and this is where again that imposter syndrome, because of the imposter syndrome, you go out and you're talking about something and you feel that you do not have the right to be there, or you do not have the right to be sitting at the table because you do not know one small portion of it, which you will anyway pick it up through experience. But because of that, you tend to shy away. You will not talk. You will not say anything out loud, with the fear that somebody is going to judge you if it comes out wrong. But if you're going to push yourself and, say, listen, I'm going to speak up, I'm going to say what is on my mind, it is okay. And that's not overconfidence or arrogance. And that is the whole thing that women tend not to do, myself included, because at the end of the day, we all think thrice and, 5 times before. And it's important to show that the perception is also important, to show that you are confident. And like, when you're a consultant, you have to be confident, because when you confidently deliver something, they're going to believe it. But even if you know the topic, but you're hesitant, somebody is not, and you might be saying the right thing, but somebody else comes along and say the same thing, they're going to take that person's opinion as the right one, right? So the point is, it's okay to act a little bit until you're confident enough to say that, listen, I'm okay. But that is not overconfidence and arrogance. And anybody, and you should not, you should just take out the negative things that come your way, because that will always come to you as you go along.
Thank you so much, Suja. Thank you.
That was a great question, Srija. We have time for 2 more questions. So we have Sumi who wants to ask a question, and then next we'll have Aarti asking her question before we wind up for today. Yes, Sumi, you can go ahead and ask your question.
Thank you, Suja, for this wonderful session. So I just want to ask you, have you ever felt a gender bias in your role of growth? If so, have you any advice to us?
Vijay, just can you just come here a minute?
I guess somebody needs to go on mute.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, biases, different kinds of biases there. When, I have 20 plus years right now. There are instances where you do face bias, but I was almost, for most part, fortunate to have some very good leaders who were my bosses. Especially when I was in Canada and in the US, both women and men. And the women, we tend to become, good mentors as well, and that has helped. But nowhere in my specific, in my particular career, I have not felt, at least in the workplaces that I have, or at least from the senior leaders, right, or the people who hired me, any kind of gender, because of a gender issue, I was not hired, because I'm female. I have not experienced that. But that being said, there have been always, as you go along, comments from maybe your peer group, especially, when you were, oh, okay, so how did you, and, the gender jokes, those kind of things, especially when it was in consulting, you're surrounded by the, the most of your colleagues. I mean, they're nice guys, they don't realize, but most of them, it tends to be a very male dominated field, right? So there is, but the point is, again, you take it through. My thing is very simple. Unless it's not going to, impact me personally or my work, I just take it through 1 year and, leave it through the other, right? Because there will always be fools who kind of talk things that are inappropriate. But from an organizational point of view, I was very fortunate, because I think most of the organizations also realize that, when it comes to, hiring, or, hiring someone for a position, it's mostly the skill sets and the fit for the role, rather than the gender. And I think that should be the only way it should be taken. But yeah, if you were to talk, if, I mean, especially in consulting, I had people who, I don't think they meant it in a bad way, but they always, attributed women as the feminine, if you're going for a pitch to a client, and you would be, pitching, and they'll be like a bunch of guys, there'll be like 4 people going to pitch for a proposal, and they say, oh, the token woman, to make it like, the hard, the 4, the rough guys and the one lone pretty, they think it's a compliment, but it's not a compliment, because you're not there for your, your physique or your fitness or whatever. When you are there because you're contributing equally or even more, right? So those things you should call out immediately. Like I was saying, obviously those people have to apologize if they say something like this, but the point is, don't let it hurt your performance or hurt your confidence or any of that, because sometimes it also comes from their own insecurities, their own, lack of judgment, and maybe not really, meant at you. So you just have to soldier on.
Thank you for the question, Sumi, and thank you for answering, Suja. One last quick question from Aarti, and we wind up.
Thank you, Tejaswini. Hello, Suja. This is Aarti from Suntech. Yeah. So you spoke about resilience and the need for people to stand up for themselves when they face an adversity and to prove or have that fire in them. So what I'm going to ask about is people on the other end of the spectrum who are quite happy with what they have and hence not ambitious or do not want to break out of their comfort zone, right? They do not have a motivation to come up. So when you're looking around for upcoming leaders, they never come up. They're not very excited to take up challenging roles. Maybe they do not have a mentor or a role model that they can look out to. So as managers, or what do you have to say to them, people who are not ready to break out of their cocoon, they're very comfortable there, and yet there is a lot of potential with them. Okay, so what do you have to say to them or to us as people who want to groom them and bring them up?
Yeah. So Aarti, so I would look at it like this, right? Like everyone has different priorities, right? So for one person, my priority would be like, okay, I want, I have this goal, and I want to really climb the corporate ladder. If if that's what you want. Somebody else would be like, okay, I just want a regular paycheck coming in. I want a job that keeps me busy, that keeps me occupied, but I also have other priorities, which, that's my life's priority. I am not looking for, and I have seen both kinds of people, and both are right. Like it's what floats someone's boat. But the point is, if you have potential, you cannot drag someone and, make them a leader or any of that. It has to, leadership, generally comes out from, within, because you will definitely see them stand out. They want to be, engaged with others, because when you come into the senior leadership roles, it's not even about the work, the content, because it's all about personal relationships, networking, management of stakeholders, and looking at the welfare of the whole organization, the employees. So you have to have some of those traits which want you to work with different sets of people, different kinds of and someone who does not have that ambition, or I don't think you have to drag someone in, but at the same time, you should give the opportunities. The opportunities, the equal opportunities to be given to everybody. But how they choose to do it, and you could maybe, if you see someone has potential, you can talk to them and see, where do they want to be? Or, it's a very tough question to ask, and I generally don't, but at least they would have some idea, I would like to do this, or I would like to learn something. I see myself going in this direction. Like in a consulting firm, generally, there are two tracks. One is, you can either go on the partner track, where it's a lot of business development, sales, all of those kind of things. Or you can go into the executive director track, which is more from a technical knowledge perspective, but you don't have to go in and generally win bids and be the face of the firm outside, right? And people are built differently. So at a certain point, they're asked, which track would you like to do? And based on, your potential, as well as your own, inclination, you are picked, or you are, allowed to go. So it's okay, because people have different priorities, different things, and whatever floats one's boat, right? But the point is, as a manager, you can listen, you can see if, someone is not coming out because of some, shyness, introvert nature, or whatever, some other issues that they're going on. Maybe if you talk to them, it might come out, especially if you see there is potential. But the point is, you don't force anybody beyond a certain point, is what I would say.
Thank you, Suja. Thanks.
Thank you, Aarti. Thanks, Suja. It was lovely talking to you, listening to all the answers and the wonderful questions we got from the audiences. I would now hand it over to Jaya to take it ahead.
Jaya, you're on mute.
Am I audible? I think I am. Thanks for the wonderful insights, Suja. It was a lovely session. And I think by connecting the talking points to real life examples, you have made the entire session much more relatable, than a usual talk session. So I'm sure the session would have got many of us started on a retrospective on how we can work on our resiliency and extending that culture to our personal as well as professional circle. Tejaswini, thank you for a seamless hosting across the segments. Thanks very much, dear.
Pleasure is mine. Thank you for having me here.
And thanks to EVIT, especially Aditi Radhakrishnan and Radhika Vishwanathan for providing us the platform and for supporting us in organizing and sustaining this series. Thanks, Aditi, and thanks, Radhika. And not the least, thanks to each one of you in the audience for taking the time out on a weekend and participating in the discussion. I know that there are other questions coming in, but due to the paucity of time, we have to close the session. But we will be back with another session of the Fireside Chat series soon, in 3 months' time. We hope to see you all there. With this, we sign off. Have a great weekend and stay safe. Bye-bye.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you for
Thank you, everyone. Bye-bye.
Suja, special thanks from EVIT. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. It's been an honor, and EVIT is a great platform for women. So continue to do what you're doing, and it's been a pleasure to be here. And if there are any questions that anybody wants to talk, please feel free to reach out to Jaya or Tejaswini or Aditi.
That's wonderful of you. I think participants, any one of you who left, please email
EVIT Kerala office, and we will collate it and send it to Suja, get a response and send it back to you. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. Have a good one.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
A great weekend too.